So let me tell you something about how to attract and how to satisfy, so they tell their friends how good it was, Chinese visitors to the Balkan region, and profiting from what we call the second wave of Chinese travelers. So let's see if this is working. It is. So already, thank you very much. There was some introduction into COTRI. So we are based in the north of Germany, and we have offices, of course, in China, and we have, as you can see in this list, a lot of country partners in many different countries, and of course for the Western Balkan region, Andre and CEATM is our country partner, and we have been working very well together for a number of years. Yeah, also very briefly, so I've been working with China since 1970s, and for 10 years I was myself an inbound tour operator, at that time of course mostly for business delegations. And I think already listening to the opening remarks, I would already add, don't forget that when we talk about tourism, we're not only talking about leisure tourism, we're also talking about business tourism and so on. So, and so in 2002 I became a full-time professor, in 2004 I started the Institute, and I'm happy to say that I'm also a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society, where our boss is the Queen, and I'm a research fellow of the Japanese Society for the Promotion of Science, where our boss is the Emperor. So you see a lot of bosses still. Yeah, just an illustration, so where we are present, and so we are in the process of tainting the world red, and I think today we will add one more element to this map, I'm happy to say. So, but this is, and yeah, one thing I put up here is, so in September we did something rather crazy. We did a 12-hour non-stop webinar together with some partners in Finland, so in a TV studio, and we were again showing the interest. We had more than 12,000 logins from 120 different countries. And so this is for 12 hours you can see how is China outbound tourism in New Zealand, in Australia, in Southeast Asia, in Kenya, of course also here in Finland, in America. So all this material is still online, so if you want to have some more ideas about how is China outbound tourism, so this is there's a link, gbtimes.com/webinar, where you have everything is on YouTube, so you can look at this 12 hours massive information, so as a backing up to this. So what I want to talk about is how to attract and how to satisfy Chinese travelers coming here, and I put this into 9 theses and 2 summaries. And the first thesis is here. So what we see is that China outbound travel is continuing to grow, even though the Chinese economy is slowing down. So this was already mentioned. It's still growing at 7-point-something%, but it's not growing anymore at 10 or 12% as it used to be. So, but if you look at the numbers, and I'm going to give you a few numbers in a minute, still China outbound tourism is growing by 17-18% like it was before. So the question, of course, is why is outbound tourism not in any way influenced by the slowdown of the economy? And the answer, in a nutshell, is to say when we have Chinese travelers, especially coming to Europe, long-distance travel, the first message to take home is don't think of these people as holiday makers. No Chinese person is coming to Europe on holiday. So this is something you have to change your mind from your normal set. I think for most of you, you are dealing with my fellow German countrymen or other people who come here to relax and to slow down and to spend time on doing nothing but going to the beach. Chinese people do this as well, but not in Europe. They don't sit 10 hours in an aircraft, apply for visa, spend a lot of money to come here only for relaxation. You can do this in China. China is big. You have in the northeast you can go skiing, in the south you have an island like Hawaii, Hainan, and you have the surrounding countries where people speak Chinese, where you get decent Chinese food. So for this, they don't travel to us. So, and I'm using this way of thinking. Think of these people as investors, and they're investing their time, their money, their effort, and this can be real direct investment. So Chinese are buying up in many places in the world, including Europe, real estate companies, services for profit, because we seem to be very cheap to them, and also for passports, for permanent residency, and so on. But there's also indirect investment. So the leisure travelers, they're traveling in a big way for self-esteem, so to show to themselves, hey, I made it, I'm rich enough, I can afford to go to this long noses, as we are called, the Western people, and also of course for the peer group to confirm I am important. So I have a big house or apartment, I have a big car, I have an expensive watch, my son is at a foreign university, and I have international travel experience. This is part of the set. If you want to be somebody in China, you have to have seen the Sydney Opera, and you have to have seen the Colosseum. Otherwise, you're not taken serious. So social capital, Bourdieu, maybe you heard about this person, these ideas. It's about status, it's about prestige. And of course it's also a long-term investment in the form of education. At the moment there are almost 500,000 Chinese students studying outside of China. So the latest number I saw was 450,000, something like that. And of course there's informal education. I'm sure everybody in this room has something on his or her body or in your bag which was made in China. So we're all customers of the Chinese. So it makes a lot of sense to go and have a look at how your customers are living, how are they behaving, so if you want to sell something to them. So market knowledge is simply getting more experience. So I think this is Mate was saying very nicely, we want to have familiarity and we want to have exotic things at the same time. So to see how the world is different from home, and of course the Western world is different from China in many ways. So to also to understand better what is normal back home. So you learn about culture only from being confronted with other culture. The fish don't know there's water. Fish have no idea that water is existing until the moment you take them out of the water. Then they realize something is missing. But as long as the fish is in the water, they don't know about water. So as long as you stay in your own culture, you don't know about other culture, and you don't know that there's this specific. So, second thesis. Some numbers. China outbound tourism is increasingly representing a major part of global tourism, but don't forget we talk about the top 10% of the Chinese society. So China has almost 1.4 billion people, and 19% of these people have, almost everybody in China has enough to eat. Cheers.
Thank you.
Has enough to eat, and almost everybody in China has a roof over his head, and electricity in almost all places, and there will be a road to the village where maybe a bus is coming once a day. There will be some basic schools, some basic health thing. Never before in China this was achieved. And look at India, how it could be worse. This is a great achievement, and we are very happy for all the Chinese who don't have to be afraid that they will die of hunger. But these people are not our customers. And if somebody in China has $100 a month in his pocket, or $120 a month in his pocket, it makes a big difference for that person. You can buy a better coffin, you can have a bigger wedding party, but if you have $100 a month or $120 a month, it doesn't make any difference in the question, can you afford to travel to Ljubljana? Of course not. So we talk about the top 10% of the society, and if you look at the numbers, for this year we will have approximately 150 million border crossings out of the global international travel of probably 1.15 billion trips. So this is now 10%, so 1 out of 10 international border crossings is coming from mainland China. But this is only representing about 5 to 6% of the Chinese people, because it's of course not 150 million different Chinese people. So you can read this many times in newspapers, 150 million Chinese people are traveling. Of course not. Many people travel several times. Some people travel 200 times a year, living in Shenzhen, working in Hong Kong, going to work every day, crossing the border. So we talk about maybe 70 million out of 1.35 billion inhabitants. For 2020, our forecast is that we will go up to about 210, so more or less doubling the number in 6 years, to 210 million trips. And this will be done by approximately 120 million different people. So this will be 9% of the society. This is already a big growth, but still we are within the top decile of the Chinese society. So for us, the Chinese people who come here are those people who are in China, the important people, people who are used to having a red carpet rolling in front of them 24 hours a day. So this is what they are expecting, and so they are expecting to be treated as important person, as VIP, as they are in most cases in China. So whenever you read figures about the average income of the Chinese or the average income or average GDP, forget about it. This is not important. We are interested in the fate of the rich Chinese people. Are the rich Chinese people getting richer at which speed? So for the common Chinese people, we wish them all the best as a people-to-people base, but as a customer, we don't care about 90% of the Chinese. So just a few numbers, and I think we will have Andre will have some more. So you can see the growth. So in 2000, do we have a pointer? No, okay. Well, you can see in 2000 we are at about 10 million travels. So you can see that within less than 15 years it's risen tenfold. So the green column is January to September. It was already 85, and actually now we already know from January to November it was more than 100 million border crossings in 11 months. So we will probably reach 112, maybe even 150 million border crossings. So you can see this has been a strong growth, and you can see especially after 2010 it has been even developing even faster than before. So which also means that most of the Chinese outbound travelers have been starting to travel overseas only a few years ago. They're still learning, they're still new, they still have a long list of places to visit. Because when they were young, when they were kids, they were not traveling with their family overseas. People didn't have enough money at that time, or they were not able to do that. So this is all a new development, and so most of the Chinese, we do a lot of research, of course in China, most of the Chinese, when you ask when was the first time you went out of China, for many people, maybe Hong Kong, Macau is 2006, 2007, and going beyond Greater China, this is 2010, 2011, 2012. So this is all rather recent. And of course, arrival numbers are nice for academics and nice for politicians, but for the tourism industry, we don't care about arrival numbers, we care about money. How much are they spending? How much is left in our pocket? So spending and margin. And if you look at the orange line, this is why we are here, and this is why so many people are interested in this topic. So you can see the Chinese spending in the last 5 years or so has been going simply through the roof. And you see the United States and Germany as a number 2 and number 3. And we can see for 2014, we have approximately 125 billion euros spent by Chinese for international travel. This is the amount of United States and Germany, number 2 and number 3, together. So the Chinese spending as much money in international travel as number 2 and number 3 together. And just to give it one perspective, I added this number just last night from a current article. So down here you can see China's share of global GDP is now at about 14%. Comparing this, for instance, with Russia, which I think has been a big market for this region, and still is, it's 1.4%. So just to, of course there are also more Chinese people, but just to give you some idea how much money is behind all this development. So China in terms of GDP is 10 times bigger than Russia. So I think this is, if you I know there have been discussions, for instance, last weekend when I was in Bulgaria, so this was a discussion, okay, how is the relation with the Russian market and the Chinese market in terms of luxury travel. Very simple, you can say the money behind it is 10 times in China the money we have in Russia. So that's all the numbers I will give you. I think some of my fellow speakers will give you some more. So when we talk about spending, what we saw in the last few years, you saw this spending went up almost 100% per year, or at least more than 50% a year, with the number of people only by 18. So we saw that the spending per person per day was going even faster than the growth of outbound tourism. So this is slowing down now. So we will see that the spending per person per day is actually not much growing anymore. So the spending will grow with the growth of the people. Part of this is simply a statistical trick. So don't let me start on China and tourism and statistics. I can talk the whole day about that. But just one point to make, as you can see here, there have been a lot of Chinese people buying very expensive watches and jewelry and diamonds. All this is inside tourism spending, even so they don't buy this as a souvenir, but again as an investment. What has happened in the last 2 years? This has moved in a big way to buying property, to buying real estate. So we are also working, for instance, for COTRI, and they are really weeping at the moment. They are down 25%. So Chinese are spending less money on jewelry and more money on real estate because jewelry does not buy residence permits. Jewelry does not buy golden visa or even passports. So if you buy property in Portugal, in Cyprus, in Malta, in some other places, you get residency permit after some years. You can even get an EU passport. And that is for Chinese people, of course, very attractive. So a lot of rich people in China are anxious about what will happen, what will the government do further in their anti-corruption drive. A lot of Chinese people are building emergency exits. So, to have something in your pocket which looks like this is much better if you want to travel around the world than having a Chinese passport where you still need a visa for most places. So what we see is not that the Chinese are spending to the upper end of the market. It's not they spend less money than before, but now they spend money on something which is not in the tourism spending statistic, whereas before it was. So, as usual, you have to look carefully. And so, OFDIs, or outbound foreign direct investment, we heard that this is now actually China is a net exporter of investment, and so this is also for this region an important thing to look at. The good news why it is important for you to come here is what we see, and this is the second wave we're talking about, is that with time, with the development of people traveling, getting more experience, the Chinese are starting to go to smaller destinations, so beyond Paris and Frankfurt and of course Sydney and New York City. So that means they go to smaller countries like Slovenia, and they go also to smaller destinations within the big countries. So we have been working with Italy in the past, and you could see until like 2 years ago, if you look at the overnights in Venezia, Firenze, Milano, Roma, then you have 90%, more than 90% of the Chinese overnights covered. So the Chinese, until recently, did not actually travel to Italy. They traveled to these 4 cities. And nobody would go, except a few students, maybe to Perugia or Siena or Napoli or Bari or whatever. So this is changing now. You can see that they are spreading further afield. So when I was at the conference in Australia, we had the same discussion that the Chinese used to go only to Sydney and to Melbourne and maybe to Queensland, and now they're going to places like Tasmania and also Western Australia and so on. So you can see Hong Kong and Macau is still, half of the market is still just Hong Kong and Macau, but they are growing at 11, 12, 13, 14%, which is below the average growth, so they are losing market share, and that they will soon be below 50%. And we saw this year Southeast Asian countries really dramatically even decreasing. And South Korea, which has been the big star, the big rising star in trading, is still growing 36%, but no longer 59%. And so also for gambling, which I think looking at the lady behind me, is important here as well. So gamblers also go to new places, not only to Macau and Singapore, which are the two biggest gambling places in the world, ahead of Las Vegas. And you see smaller places like, I've been working with Mauritius, and they had the last 3 years, each year almost 100% growth. Seychelles, 117% growth. But also here, again, just a few, this is only numbers I will mention, from what I learned from Andre. So Croatia plus 30%, Slovenia plus 30%, Serbia plus 20%. So this is growth above the average. So the Chinese are going to smaller places, and part of this is, if you want to brag, and Chinese outbound tourism is all about bragging, about telling, hey, I've done this. To tell people, look, this is a photo of me in front of the Eiffel Tower. If you are in the right kind of the stratum of the Chinese society, you can't brag with it. Anybody say, wow, yeah, I've been to the Eiffel Tower 5 years ago, 2 times. This is nothing. So when we do interviews with package tourists, they will say, yeah, they will excuse themselves. They will say, yeah, I'm a package tourist. I know it's stupid to be pushed around like a kettle of sheep, but you know, I don't speak English. It's my first time in Europe. But next year, my friend's daughter is going to study in Finland, and then we will come back, and she will be our tour guide, and we will travel to the places in Europe we want to see by ourselves. So even the package tourists who do a package tour are knowing that this is not the prestigious thing to do. So self-organized travel is getting much more important, and therefore going off the beaten track. And this, of course, is good news for places like the Western Balkan, which is not on the beaten track of Paris and London and Munich and Zurich, maybe. So the other good news is also that the Chinese outbound travelers' age band is becoming wider. On the one end, you have children, because as Chinese people have more experience with traveling, it becomes more normal for them. Again, the top 5% of society. So they are not afraid to take their child on to a trip. They have the experiences where it's actually not dangerous to do that. And it's good for the kids, you can learn something. So only one child in China only. So, and also you have for the rich kids, schools, they will have school outings to South Korea or to other places, or even to Europe, as together with their school. So you see more children traveling, so more families. Family normally meaning either 2 unmarried couples, or if it's with a child, then it's normally 3 couples with their kids, because it's boring to have just one. So then the 3 ladies can go shopping, the 3 gentlemen go play golf, and the kids can play with each other. Or you have vertical families, grandchildren, children, so their children, and then the child. So on the other end, you have more older people, meaning 55 plus, entering the market. So you have now the first cohorts starting to become part of this group, because it's about 20 years ago that you could start businesses, start to become rich, start to become a millionaire. And these people were at that time in their 30s, so now they are moved to being 55, 60 years old. So they have money, they have a lot of travel experience. Most of them have been students outside of China, they speak English, and they have time to travel a little bit slower. They can spend 2 or 3 weeks on travel, whereas younger people still are working and don't have so much time. So if you look at the boom of cruises in China, that's a big thing, and also of course nature-based tourism, special interest tourists. You have families, you have pensioners. Again, good news I think for the product, as we heard, nature and history. This is exactly fitting for this kind of groups. So therefore, we will have to concentrate on this part. And before I talk about the second wave, of course, we have to look briefly at the other markets, because one other message take home as the Chinese outbound tourist does not exist. I'm very sorry. It's more complicated than that. If you have 100 million travels, how can they be all the same? And this is starting from simple geographical points of view. So if you live in Beijing, which is climate is like Northern Europe, you're very happy to have sunshine. If you live in Guangzhou, which is subtropical, you have sunshine all the time back home. So sunny weather is not a big problem. So this is simple. China is simply a big place. But it's also, of course, what kind of traveling you're doing. And so the other groups are basically these three I put there. So you still have package tours. It's still the greatest volume in terms of number of people. But they, so this is now second tier, third tier cities. So you will find very few people doing package tours who are living in Beijing or Shanghai or Guangzhou or Shenzhen. But so they already did this. This is not for them anymore. So now you have the smaller cities, which still means 8 million inhabitants or 6 billion inhabitants. So Nanjing, Chengdu, Chongqing, Wuhan, this kind of cities, and even below third tier cities, small cities having only 3 million people like Berlin, my hometown. So they are still looking for a cheap trip. Their main interest is to say afterwards, I did it, I joined the club, I also now have been in Europe. Never mind what was the quality of the trip, what did they see, it's just to tell afterwards I've been there. So this is a market where you will have difficulties to attract them to come here. So, and where you earn very little money, where the margins are very low, because it's all about cheap. So don't try to enter this market. But Vienna or Venice, they do that. But outside of this place, it's difficult. You still have official travelers, people spending government money or state-owned companies' money. They're still interested in luxury and in high-level spending, high-level consumption, but they do this more decent now because, as you may have read in the newspapers, since about 2 years, since a new leadership with President Xi Jinping came to power, there's an anti-corruption campaign, and so it is not a good idea to flash your expensive watch everywhere because people ask, well, as a provincial government official, well, you earn $30,000 a year, how can you have a watch which costs $100,000? Where does this money come from? You don't want to have this question. So in China we have, for instance, for officials in China, it's forbidden to stay in 5-star hotels. So what the Chinese hotels do, what's the solution? If you're a 5-star hotel, and officials are a big part of your business, and they are not allowed to stay in 5-star hotels anymore, what are you doing? Yes, you become a 4-star hotel. You take off 1 star, price is the same, quality of service is the same, everything is the same, you just change the definition. And you say, we are a 4-star hotel, and then everything goes on like before. But pragmatism, Chinese call it. But for traveling abroad, they're still allowed to stay in 5-star hotels because traveling abroad, they are representing China. So the Chinese cannot lose face by staying in small hotels. So this is still interesting, and of course a lot of this is connected with business travel. So with investments, so there is a luxury end of the market also for the region here. And the last group I want to mention here, which is very important for you, is Chinese expats, so Chinese people working in Europe, and Chinese students studying in Europe. So not all the Chinese are in China. There are a lot of Chinese already in Europe. They already have a visa, they don't have to fly 10 hours. So, and these are, so I have Chinese students in my university, and they travel every weekend. They go with Ryanair and EasyJet, they go to different places all over Europe. So these are people who are very interested in traveling and who are, of course, likely to come to smaller places because they have been to the bigger places already. Chinese expats, normally working for Chinese companies here, like Bank of China, for instance. So normally they are without their family, they earn decent money, but they're bored, they have nothing to do. So they are very interested in traveling. So And if you are new, if you don't have many Chinese visitors yet, to get people, to get things started, that people come to your place and then tell their friends about your place, an easy way is to get into contact with Chinese students associations we have in every country, Chinese entrepreneurs associations we have in every country, the Chinese embassies simply, and invite some people and give information for Chinese people already in Europe. So this is an easy way to start getting them knowing what is Nova Gorica, which I'm afraid not so many Chinese people would be able to answer positively. So these are the other groups. What we are looking mostly, what I think was the biggest, most important group is for you, are what we call the second wave tourists. So people who go for niche topics, for themed tours, and for bespoke, so specially organized arrangements. And these people have been famous for being called, they are money rich and time poor, because they're working very hard for their money. They only have maybe 1 week a year for leisure travel, so they spend money if you give them a reason to spend money, but everything has to be done in a short time. Remember I said at the beginning, this is not holidays. They're not coming here and you cannot tell them, okay, you arrive in the afternoon, okay, you check in, and the first day, well, you have a look around and you rest a little bit, and then the next morning we start the program. So they say, are you crazy? Wasting half a day? No, I arrive at 3 o'clock. What can I do at 3:30? So, one example, a friend of mine told me a nice story, that now some Chinese people have found out there's something called holiday on a farm. So which in China you don't have. And so some people say, I want to try out holiday on a farm. And what they in Austria, what they do is they call in the afternoon and they say, we will come tonight to your place. Do we have a free, we have some vacancies, and we want to arrive there, and tomorrow morning we want to have breakfast at 7:30, a typical peasant's breakfast. So they arrive in the afternoon or in the evening, and the next morning from 6:30 to 7:30, for 1 hour they walk around and they take photos of everything, including the cat, and show their kids, this is a cow, this is a pig, this is a chicken, and put all the photos on Sina Weibo, on the Chinese social media, to show their friends. And from 7:30 to 8 o'clock they have an Austrian peasant's breakfast, and at 8 o'clock they leave. So, and he told me that the peasants, they are starstruck. Before they have been able to say Guten Tag, they're already gone again. Because they only stay there for 12 hours, which is not the idea. Normally, holiday on a farm is slowing down, no mobile phone, detox. So you can see these people want to try this out, but they don't have time because they still have to go to Salzburg and to Innsbruck and to Vienna on the same day. So we move now to people who have money but no time. Now they have money and experience but no time. And of course there are other Chinese tourists who will say this is crazy, and they will stay 2 days on the farm, which already is luxury, spending so much time. So these people are, you can be sure that 95% of them have already been, certainly to Hong Kong, to Australia, and to Paris, and to London, before they come here. So, and this is, I think, a clear message. 90% of the Chinese outbound tourists will never come to Western Balkan. But 10% is still 10 million people. So this is still enough for the region. So this is clear. This is a niche product, but niches in China tend to be vast. So, and these people will mostly not travel with a package tour from a catalog. They will travel either self-organized, or they will work with a tour operator, but when they tell the tour operator what they want, and then, so they are not the hostage of the tour guide, but they tell the tour guide what they want to do. And they will travel normally in smaller groups, that might be 5 people, 8 people, 10 people, 15 people, and that will be friends, Family, and as I said, family, either vertical family, 3 generations, or several 2 generations together. Colleagues, very often. So in China, it's very common that your colleagues are also your private friends. In Europe, it's rather 2 different words. And what is called donkeys. This is a word play, so the word for donkey sounds like the same as a word for traveling. So this is that people go online and they say, okay, next summer, or rather next week, I want to travel to the Balkan region. Who wants to join? So they're looking for virtual friends online, and they share. So because it's boring to travel alone, so it's cheaper and more interesting to travel with a group. So this is people who have not known each other before, but share the same interests, read the same travel blogs, and so on. And this is possible because visa is getting easier and easier for Chinese people to get visa in the European Union, because again, the people who have enough money, they certainly know somebody who has a company in Europe, so they get an invitation, and then they get a business visa, and then they don't need a tour operator anymore to get the visa. And of course, in other destinations, it is already visa-free travel. So I mentioned Mauritius and Seychelles and the Maldives and Réunion and Madagascar. They all have no visa anymore for Chinese people. Jamaica also started that. So, and for the European Union, for Schengen, it's still complicated, but it's getting better. And if my ears hear correctly, that it is very likely that next year there will be introduced a multiple entry visa for Schengen area, because now with so many Chinese people traveling, the consulates, they have to look, somebody coming for the 10th time to Europe, they have to check for the 10th time if the translation of his birth certificate is correct. Well, why should you use this? It's a waste of money and time. And maybe you saw in the news, USA, which is very difficult to get visa, now introduced a 10-year visa for Chinese frequent travelers. So this is a big step. And of course, European Sweden will have to follow that. So this hurdle that you need a tour operator because only they can give you a tourist visa, this is getting out of the way now, because you can get business visa more easily, and the tourist visa also will become more easily in the coming years. So, what are the expectations and what are the behavior of this second wave travelers? So, few points, and I'm sure we will talk about this more today. Value for money rather than cheap prices. So these people have enough money, and if you give them a reason to spend 500 euros more, they will spend 500 euros more. It's not that they don't have the money. It is you have to convince them it's worth spending the money. And of course, as they are clever people, they know how to book a hotel themselves. So to book a room in this hotel, you go online and you book this yourself. You don't need a tour operator for that. So what you have to offer are experiences they cannot organize by themselves. So things that you can't simply buy with money. So one quick example, we are working with a company in Spain, and they offer not only that you go to a Michelin star rated restaurant, but that you go to the farm and you see how to grow the perfect carrots and the perfect cauliflower and to produce the perfect meat in the region, and what's so specific about this region's stuff. In the afternoon you see the chef preparing, the chef explaining what are the 300 things you have to do perfectly right to get to a perfect meal, and then of course they eat it. So it is from eating an expensive meal, if you have enough money, well, you can do this every day, and say, yeah, nice taste, to having an experience of knowing and a lot of opportunities to take photos and tell your friends that now you know more than they know about this. And this you cannot organize yourself, of course. So intensive, short experiences. So these people have been doing sightseeing for some years, and they find they want to do something new. So there's no bragging power in saying, yeah, I took a photo of this casino. You have to do something. So one example For instance, in Cambridge there are punts. This is kind of boats on the Cam River. It's Cambridge because the bridge over the River Cam, and which is something with a pole. So the river is very shallow, so you don't row. You push yourself forward because it's only 1 meter deep. And some years ago there was a Chinese tourism blogger with 25 million followers or 30 million followers. And he happened to go there, and he found, well, that's very funny, and he tried this out, and he wrote a blog about it. So now, if you go to the Chinese Google, so to Baidu, so if you put what to do in Cambridge, this comes first. So now a lot of Chinese people started to come to this company who is renting out these boats, these punts, and they were asking, again, they want to rent this boat for 15 minutes. They didn't even have a price for that. You could normally rent this out for 2 hours or 4 hours. So because all they wanted is to try this out for a few minutes and then take photos, and then they done this. But of course, so we worked with them and we told them, well, on a boat it's difficult to do a selfie. You don't see the boat. So you need somebody standing on the bank of the river. So they said, put a photographer there and offer them professional photos, and they will pay for that. And also we said, well, offer them a certificate that they're now punting experts, and they have the photo to show that. And do some little piece of art, ask a local artist to make a little boat out of bronze or something nice looking in a nice packaging, and guarantee only 999 copies will ever made. It cannot be bought online anywhere, you can only buy it at this place, and put it at 400 pounds or 600 pounds, doesn't matter. People will buy it because it's exclusive and it's only there. And probably, well, the production cost will be 10 pounds. So you will earn from this little bronze boats, you will earn more money than you earned the whole year from renting out the boats. But this will be something where the Chinese people will buy this. And then it's not a question of money because there's no competition for that. And after you sold this 999 limited edition, where you do another one, a little bit different, and another limited edition. So this is how you can profit. And of course, this is by accident. Of course, you can invite some tourism blogger or some other person to come here, and then this is a way to kickstart your business. So, as we said, new locations. Why should you go twice on the Eiffel Tower? No point in that. So they come, hopefully, if you give them the right stories, the right products, they come to Ljubljana after they've been to Vienna, they come to Dubrovnik after they've been to Athens. They're interested in that, but you have to tell them that you're existing, and you have to tell them why it is interesting to come here. And shopping, still major activity, major part of spending. Shopping has been moving from buying the famous brands to lifestyle reaffirmation, that you buy things which are fitting to you. So which again is bad news for companies like Louis Vuitton and Gucci. They are losing market share in China because anybody in China already has 5 Louis Vuitton bags. There's no point in having the 6th one. So it's rather you go to local fashion, to local arts. So if you have art here, and especially if you can watch how it is done, you can meet the artist, have a photo with the artist, and then you can buy something, or you have some local special things. Now there's a chance to sell this. Some years ago they would have a piece of paper where their friends told them, if you go to Europe, buy this. So now you have, with this second wave travelers, they rather want to have something authentic, regional and exclusive, certainly something you cannot buy in China. That's very important. And you cannot buy on the high street or in a shop in Singapore. Already, last thesis. The Chinese outbound travelers get more experience. They are getting more interested in your offers, but also they get more demanding because they have total experience and they can go now almost everywhere. So on the one hand, they have been asked that they should behave better. So even Mr. Xi Jinping this year, when he was on Maldives, went away from his official speech and reprimanded the Chinese tourists, don't destroy the corals and don't eat cup noodles in your hotel room, but eat more local fish. So bring more business to the local restaurants. So you would think Mr. Xi Jinping, the boss of the second biggest economy in the world, has other things to care about, but the Chinese government and the Chinese palace sees themselves very much as an ambassador of China, so that they are representing China in the foreign countries. So, which means that they are told to behave there. If you travel with a package tour, you get a 64 pages booklet in Chinese, so where you're told don't jump queues, don't spit, don't walk backward, which is a form of gymnastics in China, but people will think you're crazy in Europe. So they're told to behave, don't be drunk in public, because they're told you are representing China, and if you do something bad, they will have a bad image of China. But at the same time, the Chinese want to have this balance. And again, we heard at the beginning, you want to have familiarity and exotic things at the same time. So the Chinese want at the same time to be treated, this segment of the market, to be treated as global experienced travelers. So don't tell them, I heard Chinese people are superstitious, that they hate the number 4. Don't worry, we don't give you a hotel room with number 4. So this is for package tours, maybe that's true. But for these people say, who do you think you're talking to? I've spent 5 years in Harvard. I'm not superstitious, and they will be actually offended. So in this webinar we did, Mr. Xu Jing, who is the top guy in UWTO for Asia and for China, he said, we have passed the stage of hot water kettles. So this idea, Chinese tourists want to have a hot water kettle in their hotel room to make their tea. Yes, it's still not a bad idea to have that, but this is not enough to satisfy these people. They want, on one hand, they want to be treated as international travelers, but on the other hand, they still want you to show respect to the Chinese culture. So even they speak English perfectly, they want you to have a Chinese website and a Chinese information brochure and Chinese signage in your museum. Not because they need it, they can read the English stuff, but because they want to be shown, seeing that you show respect to their culture, that they are a big country. So, and this is something where they're very, very attentive to and always anxious that they're treated badly. And if you do it positively, so one example, some time ago I was at the airport in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And there the announcements are made in 3 languages, in Malay, Chinese, and English. And I heard some Chinese people there talking to each other, and they were so happy because the Chinese announcement comes before the English one. So it is Malay, Chinese, English, not Malay, English, Chinese. We probably wouldn't care. We wouldn't even notice. For Chinese people, this is important. Oh, we are giving face. They recognize we are strong. So this is something you have to do both at the same time. So have Chinese food on your breakfast buffet, but don't expect all the Chinese to eat it. They will eat fried eggs and local sausage. So, which from all this you see, this is what Andre and our other country partners and we are trying to do is you need to understand which segment of the Chinese market you're talking to, and to adapt your products. It normally means make it shorter, snappy, documented, give them certificates, give them videos so they can prove what they have done, give them stories. So you have to understand what you read many times about the package tourists, going by bus to a place, jumping off the bus, taking a photo, jumping to the next place. These people are existing, but this is not the whole market, and probably this is not your main market. So, summary. So, the good news is you can attract Chinese travelers to new places, to new activities, to new periods of the year, to new products compared to your standard Western visitors. So, which means not only that with Chinese people you have more business, but you have a different kind of business. So I think for a lot of areas in the Balkans, it is summertime and it is beach. So there's no point to get more people coming in the summertime for the beach. But it is difficult, I think, to attract German tourists to come in November to the hinterland. So for Chinese people, they're not coming here to go to the beach. They're not spending much time on beach anyway, and if they want to go to a beach, there are a lot of very nice beaches between China and here. They don't come here for a beach life. So you can, if you have some nice story to tell them, if you have some good product, they come also when the sun is not shining, and they also come to places which are not on the shore, which are not a beach location. So this is, it's not only more business, it is also, you can fill in seasonal gaps, you can fill in, you can work with regions where there have been no or few tourists before. The bad news is, they're not coming by themselves. Sorry. You have to do something for that. You have to give them reasons to come and to recommend this to their fellow friends. You have to do a number of things right. So, and you have to understand that any answer to the questions, what do the Chinese travelers want? I have every week a journalist calling me, and they always ask this question: can you give us the 3 most important reasons for the Chinese people to come to Europe, or the 3 most important reasons for the Chinese travelers, what activities, what they want to do? And unfortunately, my answer is always the wrong question. The Chinese outbound travelers not existing. But if you ask this question about Europeans, you can see it's easy to understand. So, what are European tourists want? Me, university professor, certainly I want something else. And being in my 50s, I want something else than my students. Less money, less travel experience, early 20s. They want something very different when they come to here than me. So for Chinese, it's not different. So they also want to have different things, and especially in China, it's also a question of travel experience, of exposure to foreign culture, to foreign countries, that they want to do. They want to have very different things. So beware of averages, beware of generalizations. Last slide. So you have to do a number of things. What do you have to do? In a nutshell, give them the right reasons to come. That can be something new, something exclusive, only found here, something very intense. You can, in a few hours, you can learn something which has a connection to China. If you look in your history, I'm sure there are a lot of people who had some connection with China. And if you go to the recent history, of course, Yugoslavia was a special case for the relations with China. So everything connected with Tito will be interesting for Chinese people, for instance. Get endorsement by celebrities. It can be movie stars or sports stars or travel bloggers. Get quality labels. So that's something we are doing, other people are doing as well, where they can show, yeah, we have been preparing, we did a training, we learned something about, create hype on social media that people talk about you. Give them, second point, give them the right story to tell and the opportunity to do so. That means that you have a clear story why. So the Ljubljana Christmas market is famous for what? That it's a nice Christmas market, well, there's so many nice Christmas markets. What is the one sentence which is making a difference from the other ones? What they can put on their social media and tell their friends, hey, I've been to the Ljubljana Christmas market and it's special because this is the only one where, or whatever. And of course for this they need Wi-Fi. They want to tell their friends now. There's something called, you see this word, co-presence. It used to be that you go on a trip and after you come home, you tell your friends about it. You show them your ideas. Now, it moved to with a smartphone. You see something, you take a photo and you put it on the social media. So half an hour later, they can see it. Now we move to co-presence. Actually, your friends are traveling virtually with you. So you see Chinese people, they go to a restaurant, they take a photo of the menu and then ask their friends in Shanghai, what should I order? And the friends in Shanghai say, oh, you're at this area. I read in some other information, this is a typical food. Please order this one and take a photo and tell me how it tastes. So there are so the one Chinese person in front of you is connected to their friends real time. And it's also for shopping, that they buy for their friends something. They want to know, look, they have a nice jacket, costs 350 euro, photo, should I buy it for you? And then the answer comes, yeah, buy two. But only if you have Wi-Fi. If your shop has no Wi-Fi, if your hotel has no Wi-Fi, if your airport, your city center has no Wi-Fi, they cannot connect, they will not buy, they will not be happy. So this is one of the tasks, I think, where everywhere in Europe we are now moving in this process of getting free Wi-Fi and not something where you have to fill out a long form to register, but simply being there. And last point, give them the right feeling of being more welcome than others. Chinese people do not want to be treated like everybody else. They want to be treated better than anybody else. Because they think we are the biggest market, we are the biggest country, you have to do something. We are the future rulers of the world again, and we used to be, so you have to treat us extra special. I think that's it. Thank you very much, and we will have time for some discussion. And you can see we are moving to our new headquarters in Hamburg, and of course locally CEATM is our partner, of course, here. Thank you very much.